see some 50 people.
I will give you a green light because I have also to live streaming on the YouTube channel, and that will take me also a couple of minutes. So I'm going to work on that.
Okay.
Great. So we're already live. If you could please, Dr. Van Land, lead us through the presentation. Thank you so much for your patience.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for opening the room. We're very pleased to be part of the 2022 edition of the SDGs Learning, Training and Practice Workshop series at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum. This particular session will welcome speakers to the topics of transforming education, digital learning and partnerships toward a more sustainable and equitable future. This is a title that has attracted many of you to register, and we hope that we will have a good discussion. We've tried to also propose a quite interactive session with interventions from the speakers, but also with an opportunity for you to take part in a Slido series of questions. This particular workshop today is focusing on SDG 4. This is the main SDG under review at this UN High-Level Political Forum 2022. A very important SDG that at the IAU we see as one of the underlining or transversal SDGs for everything that is actually connected to Agenda 2030 and all the other SDGs. And indeed, what has become kind of a buzzword, and we will see how that goes today, but it's about transforming education. What does that mean? How does it work? And how is it actually translating into practice? This is the umbrella term that encompasses the common objectives and methodologies of the type of educations outlined in SDG Target 4.7, which include education for sustainable development, global citizenship education, environmental education, and this also links to climate change education, human rights education, among others. The aim is to work towards a more equitable and sustainable future, and this requires the international community to actually prioritize transforming education and the high-level political forum in a global event to actually see how to monitor and review progress on SDG 4 and how it translates around the world. Therefore, we've invited the speakers to address 4 questions that you can also find in the UNESCO Futures of Education report, and links as well to the UNESCO Higher Education conference that took place in May this year, or in preparation of the Transforming Education Summit to be held in September 2022, and which saw a pre-summit in Paris just a few days ago, last week. The questions that we will be addressing is, what do we need to continue doing in the current education setting around the world? What do we need to invent in order to really transform? What should we abandon? Always a difficult question. And how to really transform education. So these difficult questions have been asked to our speakers with us today. I would like, before giving them the floor or continuing, also highlight who are the partners of this session. So we work together with Global Schools Program and the SDG Academy. And so very nice to be partnering with you. My World Mexico in Mexico, York University in Canada, and the trio, the International Association of Universities that I represent here as Secretary General. And we also have in the chat room, Isabel Toman working with me on everything related to higher education and research for sustainable development. And we work together with the Association of Commonwealth Universities and l'Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie, AUF, which is both global and also regionally specific. So we will discuss innovative approaches to transforming education through partnerships, best practices, digital learning. We will try and provide some tangible resources and takeaways for you to actually action transforming education in your different settings. And we hope to really have this platform as a platform for all to feel comfortable to also share your thoughts in the slidos that you will see in a minute. So very pleased to welcome on board Patrick Paul Walsh from the SDG Academy as a speaker, Charles Hopkins from York University, and also the expert on SDG 4, and you will say a bit about that, of course. Helen Balderrama from York University and York International, very warm welcome. Abigail Martinez Renteria from My World Mexico. Amanda Abram from the program manager at Global Schools. Shireen from Global Student Forum, and together we hope that we will have sufficient ammunition for you to actually action your activities also for the transformation of the kind of education that we need for today and for tomorrow. So starting with this session, I would like, you will see, we will go with a series of questions and we will ask each time the speakers to comment and come in on these different difficult questions that we have. So, as I said, these are derived from the UNESCO Futures of Education report, which is looking at how to transform education for the future. This will fuel the whole process around the Transforming Education Summit that met in Paris and will meet again in September for the summit itself in New York. What I would like you to then respond to, the speakers here on the screen, is a first question, or let's start with a Slido for that matter. Imagine you could change one particular aspect of education systems today, and then what is it that you would change? So I will let you just look at what you have on your screen, maybe action the QR code and get to the Slido, and then respond in the chat or on the Slido what you see should be changed if you want the higher education systems to much more adequately then respond to the needs of the current world. So imagine you could change one particular aspect of education systems today. What would it be? Will you show us the results? So inclusion, funding comes in very strongly, internationalization, digitalization, affordability, program models, inclusion. You would change the curriculum. You would go to digitalization, but inclusion is a very strong one, and funding. So that's really interesting. Inclusion is maybe one of the strongest ones. flexible pathways, capabilities access, open to all kinds of learning types. Lifelong learning, I saw partnerships, inclusion comes out as very, very strong. So let me now turn to the speakers, and I will go a bit randomly around the room and offer you the opportunity to look at two first questions. What should we continue to do? And what needs to be creatively invented moving forward? So let me start by giving the floor to Amanda and Amanda Abram, sorry, and to Patrick Paul Walsh. So Amanda, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone that gave your inputs on the Slido. It's very interesting to see those things come up as major themes. And so what I do in my day-to-day work is I work with teachers at the K through 12 level in the formal education space. So I'll definitely be bringing some input from that perspective. So one of the things I think that we should continue doing is promoting creative and active pedagogy in classrooms that really supports transformative education. A lot of the things that we see teachers doing now are engaging in active pedagogy such as project-based learning, discussions, group work, and debating and collaboration. And there's a lot of research that actually shows students engaged in kind of small group learning activities have higher grades and they retain information longer, they have reduced dropout rates, and it helps them create friendships across diverse groups, diverse racial, ethnic, gender, and school groups of this area. So I think we should continue pushing these types of learning models that really promote the development of transformative education competencies and incorporating the resolution of socio-environmental problems within the classroom, helping us really address education as the training of citizens and the training of communities, and not only just learning the academics. And then on the second question, what do I think needs to be creatively invented afresh? I would love to see, since technology is also a theme of this session today, I would love to see the conversion of technology and how we really support schools with benchmarking transformative education. The UNESCO standards on this are widespread. There's a lot we can do according to the UNESCO report. So it would be great to support schools with technology that helps them in mapping their curriculum to the SDGs, tracking their impact, and plotting their entire SDG journey through relevant assessments. So that's my quick input on those two questions.
Wonderful, very rich already. So Patrick Paul.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I'm delighted to be here. It's great to see all those important things like funding and inclusion. So I work with the SDG Academy, and one of the things we've been doing, going back to Jeffrey Sachs's Age of Sustainable Development, is developing massive online courses, which are on edX. And I guess the reason why we started to do this was because curriculum, like even inside the universities, you can say that you want to orientate the universities in education and research and policy outreach towards the SDGs, but actually universities are organized along disciplines, and to actually get an interdisciplinary course and a transdisciplinary course that does practical elements, saying what should be done inside governments or corporates or civil society is not that straightforward. And I think to continue what we're doing, there was a call with the UN Academic Impact where there was 1,000 universities on really asking this question. We really want to do electives. We really want to have a bachelor's in sustainable development, but actually we're missing curriculum and core textbooks and such like. So to continue, we in the Academy, we certainly want to continue down the road of creating and putting up nice courses across all the different, what I call means of implementation, like finance and data and technologies, and across all the different goals and monitoring, review, and governance, etc. So we need obviously to develop better syllabus and more courses, and we continue to do that. In terms of what we need to start inventing, so one is partnerships, right? So there has been very during COVID, I think one of the benefits of COVID was the fact that people suddenly realized that going online and doing global classrooms online and teaching online is actually creates opportunities as well. So we do see a lot more universities doing hybrid masters, online masters, bringing staff together, etc. And the opportunity, if you don't really have staff in your own university doing the SDGs, you can still do them online or hybrid, bring people with those sort of expertise in. And also that opportunity is a brilliant one if you wanted to do some more online masters, let's say with Africa, that you could partner with universities in Africa and you could offer courses and programs, not necessarily degrees, but certainly courses and programs with African universities. And finally, you can outreach a bit better, like we're doing today, in a policy sense to governance and to civil society and corporates. So I think what is happening, and there's innovation, is on the micro masters, micro bachelors, professional certification, the upskilling. So I think this is partnerships, though. This is universities working with SDG partnerships to actually deliver knowledge and practice into where it's actually needed. So they're the two things. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yes, I think also reverse. I think we should definitely have this opportunity to listen to these courses from everywhere around the world. You're right. That would definitely enrich the curriculum in a very meaningful way. So I will give the floor now to Abigail Renteria or Martinez Renteria. Sometimes I don't know if I need to say both names, so forgive me if I will turn into Abigail in the third round of questions. But the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's Martinez Renteria actually, but that's okay. It happens. I'm so glad to be here with you, Sharon. And first, I'm going to share you a little bit about what we do in My World Mexico to give you a context. We are a hybrid initiative that combines social mobilization, activism, and lifelong learning or education. And we work with people and organizations from all the sectors. So we are not focused on a university or informal education institutions, but we work with NGOs, we work with activists, we work with the private and the government sector, and we try to put everyone together and to create different initiatives for the SDGs. We make a lot of emphasis on actions that inspire, connect, and mobilize, and we work with the 2030 agenda as a route. And well, one of the things that I would say that we have to keep doing, and from the work that we have been doing, is this hybrid, how do you say, like hybrid paper that we are having right now. Like these hybrid opportunities that we are having. For example, in My World Mexico, not a lot of people have access to internet, and we have seen this, that we have seen the digital divide during the coronavirus. Something that has been very important for us is to have people that are working in grassroots movements, that are working in grassroots initiatives, and that have the opportunity to join the digital spaces as well, and to share practices and to share knowledge with others that have access to internet, and then go to the communities and spread those words as well, and to make those voices heard. So I will say that the hybrid initiatives are very important. Also, something that I think had a huge impact during the pandemic was the partnerships, the creation of partnerships. Like, for example, during the pandemic, I had the opportunity to work with a Global Schools program with Amanda. And this was an initiative that we took because of the pandemic, because we wanted to look for more digital opportunities. So that would be something. And something that we have to innovate or to create in innovative ways, I will say that one of the most important things is empowerment of youth and empowerment of those communities that are outside formal education. We have to look for lifelong learning opportunities. We have to realize that not everyone has access to formal education, and that there are a lot of knowledge, especially for sustainable development and for climate change, that is outside our institutions. So for example, in my work Mexico, we have this model that is called ambassadors, and these are people that are working with grassroots communities and people. So they have a training with us, they have training within us, and then they go to these communities and they put in practice several projects that they develop with my work Mexico, and that they have developed with these connections that we have. So I will stop there. And
thank you very much. I see there is a wealth of knowledge in each and every one of you. Very difficult to keep to the 2-3 minutes, but we will have a next round. So I will give the floor now to Shireen Omondi, who's with us from Global Student Forum. The word is yours, Shireen.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I love that our speakers have started on a very high note and I need to catch up. So I'd probably say what the Global Students Forum do. We are a democratic and independent voice of learners worldwide. So, and representing the economic, social, cultural, and educational interests of more than 200 million secondary and tertiary students from across the globe towards the international community and its institutions. And so just that I move to the question that was asked, what we should continue doing. I think partnership stands out as one of the things that I think we need to look out to, and especially partnership with students. This includes, local civil society organizations and international ones as well, higher learning institutions, because I believe that at GSF, we believe that student participation can only be regarded as meaningful if it creates a tangible impact on the outcomes of decision-making processes in different institutions, including the higher learning institutions, with government officials, and even with the wider civil society. What partnership does most of the times, it gives you the opportunity to know where you need to come in, to know the gap that is there, and to just ensure that every person is captured when you're coming up with policies. And so we need to continue having more partnerships in different levels at the grassroots and even at the international spaces. Another thing that stands out for me that we need to continue doing, and something that we're also doing at the Global Students Forum, is inclusion. And this includes, just having different students with disability represented in different committees. We also have inclusions that includes the facilitation of learning and research opportunities by the higher learning, higher education institutions and the state. And one of the things that we've called out for when we were coming up with a global declaration document is that we asked higher learning institutions and the state to incorporate the proactive exercise of academic citizenship in the community, and engage the academic community and the wider society on providing opportunities for students so that they can exercise civic participation in research and pedagogy and practice different practices that every student needs to participate in. So just having students at the center of this all. Yeah.
You would discontinue nothing. You would keep it all and you would advance. Very good. We now have the opportunity to listen to Chuck and to, where are you? Helen, yes, you're there as well. So on the screens, Chuck Hopkins and Helen Valderrama, York University. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. And it is a great honor for me to share the floor with you all. And I'm here with, of course, our York UNESCO chair, Dr. Charles Hopkins. I wanted to share a few of our experiences and learnings from the past 2 years. Similar to many higher education institutions around the world, we have faced many challenges this past 2 years. We had no choice but to pivot and change the way we do things or think about things. However, the same restrictions allowed us to be creative, to think differently on how we can continue international engagement of our university community. So I'm here to represent the work of York University along with our partners. And I'm going to be discussing two of the programs or two of the projects that we have launched in the past 2 years. In 2020, we launched the Globally Network Learning Project, which is inspired by the model of the collaborative online international learning, where classrooms from different parts of the globe collaborate through the application and use of technologies. To date, this initiative has connected 38 faculty members and over 900 students in 14 countries. The second initiative that I would like to share is the International Indigenous Student Exchange Program, which brought together 40 Indigenous students from Canada, Australia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Mexico, and the Philippines in a common and safe learning space. These initiatives were well received as demonstrated by the participation, support, and continued interest of students, faculties, and mentors from York and our global partners. And what we have learned and what we propose to continue moving forward is that we rely on each other's strengths and collaboration. This was mentioned by Paul, by Amanda, by Shireen. Equal partnership and reciprocity is very much important. We view our partners as equal partners. We share and learn from them, both knowledge-wise and even resources. And so we can happily share and report that despite the challenges of the past 2 years, there are meaningful and innovative collaborations that we have launched, and we want to continue this forward. And this is part of York University's efforts to help advance the 2030 goals, in particular quality education. Over to you, Charles.
Great. Thanks very much. And thanks, Hildy, for this opportunity. I hold the UNESCO chair at York University that's focused on reorienting education towards sustainability, and have been working on this for a while. The suggestions that have come forward so good are all excellent ones, and it would be wonderful if a university could work on them all. So far, many universities do one bit here, one bit there, and so on. So it's pulling them together. And this idea of pulling it together, I think, is one of the things that we should continue doing, is building on the existing initiatives that are not in the name of sustainability, but are already there and enhanced. The work on inclusion, the work on anti-racism, the work on even energy savings and so on. So that's the kind of thing that I think we really do need to continue working on, and to look for the low-hanging fruit, the things that we can both start and stop. And that would mean talking to people. So that idea of working together with youth and with students and teachers and students co-developing curriculum, especially as recommended by Patrick, around transdiscipline programs and so on, really good. And if there was one thing I think we really need to think about, is how we talk about this and how we present it. It still is encased in environmental aspects. And so what we need to do is to be able to present it beyond that, and to talk about it as quality education and a common good, not only for the individual, but for society as a whole. So, and in doing that, it's through our teachings. Such a small percentage of people actually get to graduate from university, but they are a huge percentage of those who will shape society in the future. So that idea of the university working in a common good through our research, our teaching, and our community engagement. Lastly, I'd say we need to be careful about how we present this to our own faculty, recognizing what's already going on, and in the new, what we do, to talk about it as program excellence, around quality, around relevance for the student, and not as energy savings and the economics. Faculty do not want to become engaged in that kind of a context. I'll stop there. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. And I see there are many different, while you maybe pull up the second Slido poll, I see in the chat, I was trying to look at who was with us here today. We have people from Brazil, Australia, Nigeria, Congo, the US, Abu Dhabi, Afghanistan, Ethiopia, Egypt, Germany, Liberia, Yemen, Quebec, Tanzania, Zambia, Tunisia, Côte d'Ivoire, Jordan, name it, also Lithuania, but that's cheating a little because I believe that our partners from York University are now also in Lithuania. So that's interesting. You bring in a new country through that door as well. But it is wonderful to see this is also inclusion, this dialogue across borders and really having this opportunity to be together. So let's move to a second Slido poll and a second question where we invite you to react. So please use the numbering. And the question is, which obstacles remain to be overcome to create effective change in education? I think the word remain should be in brackets because there are many. But look here, what are the areas that would need the most attention in an education institution to create effective change? So the opportunity, what you could click is curriculum, is it research, is it teacher training, is it professional development of staff, is it facilities and operations, is the administrative processes, are they barrier to change? Interesting. So a few more. Yes. Well, it becomes clear that what you highlight as being the greatest challenge ahead is to change the curriculum. And I think that the speakers already talked to that as well with beautiful examples on what could be changed and how it could be changed. But teacher training is also a very important one. And at the pre-summit to the Transforming Education Summit in Paris, there were very strong pleas from the teachers as well, who called for stronger support for their work, better recognition of their work, and also support in this transformation process, how they can do that, how they can be trained into it, and what they need to do, but also certainly recognition and support for the work that they do, because they are the ones that will allow to transform the world in which we live through a different kind of education. So based on the first round of questions and the polls here, we will move to the third question from the Futures of Education Initiative report, aiming towards current challenges and addressing the current negative aspects of leaving no one behind. What is it that we should abandon? So let's go in a different random order, and I will start with Abigail Martinez Renteria. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So, and what we should abandon, I was going through the comments and I saw that someone put the way that we see sustainable development, and they were saying that sometimes it's more as a slogan that actual actions and a way to see education. So that was actually my first point, like what we should abandon is this perspective of seeing education just as a discourse, a very nice discourse that is talking very high level forums, and we should translate it to something that is familiar to all of us and something that is affecting and or having benefits to us of all. So that's like the first point. How do we make this familiar to everyone? How do we make people realize that sustainable development has a direct effect in our lives and that we all can participate and be part of this movement? Then this follows my second point, that it's what is knowledge? We have to change the way we see knowledge, the way that we just focus sometimes on academic knowledge, or like for indigenous communities, for example, have been struggling for centuries and have been doing amazing amazing projects, like for climate change, for example, or for agriculture, and they have had these answers that sometimes we are looking for, in a lab, isolated from the communities and from where it's already happening. So another thing that I will say is that we have to change what do we see as knowledge and as a valid knowledge, because sometimes we tend to classify what is valid and what is not. Another one that I mentioned before is the focus on formal institutions. Like, education is happening everywhere all the time, and we always say this, but actually, how are we looking at education? And it's very hard to measure or to follow it, but we have to see the informal education as well. What are we doing to integrate sustainable development and informal education on social media, for example? That it's a very strong part of education right now. On non-formal initiatives like My World Mexico, for example, how are we following these initiatives of education? And the last one that I will say is that we should abandon the single profile of who is an educator or who is a teacher. Like, we have to reconsider who is an educator and who is a teacher, and who are we seeing as a valid educator or teacher? Because on non-formal education, like for example, in My World Mexico, we have people that are from all the sectors. And I think that I'm the only educator that has like a proper title on education. So we have to reconsider who are the ones that are there, like educating people about sustainable development, and who are going to say that are the educators, making this the hard work, let's say it. And well, my last one is regarded about the fragmentalization of knowledge as well. We have to see knowledge as a whole, and we have to collaborate with everyone, with educators, with people that are studying the ocean, with people that are looking at climate change, with people that are looking at gender equality, and we have to integrate them into education. And well, I think I will stop.
That's wonderful. Yeah, thank you, Abigail. I think you are gearing us towards a constructive revolution. Very interesting, and also very nice to see how you call for a better recognition of the major contributions of different knowledge systems and connecting the people in a different way. I also like the idea of the defragmentization of knowledge systems, but I there also would like to really call for with a strong plea for envisaging the education sector as a whole, from pre-primary to lifelong, the formal and the informal together, because that is also essential indeed, and what you said. So I would like to now give the floor to Shireen Omondi, and to take that question as well. What should we abandon? 3 minutes. Thank you.
I think what we should abandon is exclusion, because initially one of the things that we talked about, that I said we need to take in, is inclusion. The opposite of that would be exclusion. So one of the things that I think we need to do away with is exclusion, and especially when it comes to funding, where specific areas are given more resources compared to others. So when this is done, I feel like there is much attention that will be given to a different or a specific thing compared to the other, and leaves the other, not being as active as it should be. So also exclusion in terms of involvement of teachers, of students in areas of making decisions. Policymakers cannot come up with policies that protect teachers without teachers sitting down and saying, this is what works for us and this is what doesn't work for us. This goes round even for students. So exclusion plays a key role for everything that we are trying to abandon. We also have the exclusion. We have to integrate all the students. Those with disability need to be integrated with the other students, so that we come up, we know, the children understand, and even young people understand that we are growing up in a community that embraces each and every person. And when we have policies that protect persons with disability, then it's going to be easier for them to be integrated into our systems, and not just have special schools for them. Yeah, just have systems that can allow them to be integrated. And this especially for students. So I think those are, exclusion is one of them, but then exclusion in different areas needs to be, addressed. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shireen. I see that you also call for this for inclusion to become the new normal. And that will be a very nice plan moving into the future. I will now give the floor to York University once more, Helen Valderrama and Chuck Hopkins. The floor is yours, and then I will turn to Patrick, Paul, and Amanda for the final word on this question.
Charles, would you like to go first?
Sure, thank you. I'll make mine fairly short this time. When we were first thinking about education and its contribution towards a more sustainable future, we purposely called it Education for Sustainable Development. And we weren't thinking about it as a particular topic. It was about the world's education systems contributing. Now, what happened though is it fell into disciplines, or some thought it was more in their area than in others, and so on. So I think now what we need to do is to rethink. We have to abandon that idea of education for sustainable development as either a topic or a part of the content of and so on. It's really about now the purpose of education. It's embedded as a purpose so that it's what we teach. It's about how we, the stewardship of our buildings and our operations. It's about our research and so on. And it's wonderful that in these latest documents coming out from UNESCO, they're talking about it as an overall purpose of why we are preparing people. So I think it's a tremendous step forward, but it means we will have to abandon some of our other preconceived notions about what it was. Thanks.
Thanks, Charles. On the question of what we should abandon and what we should forget, I think I would support what Abigail and Shireen had mentioned, that we have to look at the definition of knowledge and who are the sources of this knowledge. I wanna refer again to one of our projects, the International Indigenous Student Exchange. For that program, York University involved not only, of course, the student participants, the faculty mentors, but we also included knowledge keepers, community leaders, non-government organizations on the topics that are important for indigenous communities around the world. So I definitely agree that we should abandon the preconceived notions of knowledge sources and knowledge keepers. I would also maybe flip a little bit this question, Hilish, if you would allow me. I think I want to address it in trying to look at what else we need to improve. Like, for example, at York University, as I mentioned, or as I shared, we are relatively successful in the virtual collaboration experiences that we had, but there remain some challenges. So for us, some of the major questions is about accessibility and inclusion, as what Shireen had mentioned. Who else have we not reached? Which partners have we not collaborated with in order to have these meaningful partnerships and program collaboration? The other piece is about language. All of these virtual collaborations that we have right now are still predominantly in English. How are we solving or addressing the issue of multilingualism or plurilingualism in terms of delivering our programs and initiatives? So one of the ideas, for example, for us at York University is to involve, for example, our graduate students from our School of Translation Studies And so I wonder if among all of our partners, if we can also benefit from some of the students or graduate students who can actually assist their fellow students in participating in these programs. So those are just some ideas. I hope that helps.
It certainly does, but I will have to watch you. I see that you have ideas of changing the questions. I don't know what to do with that. No, that was very good actually, and a very good idea. I think that having ESD as a backdrop for as much as possible, like Agenda 2030, that was a strong idea, Charles, and very important indeed. And for having worked for so many years on HESD as well, we also hope that it certainly doesn't become a disciplinary approach to things, but rather something dramatically transdisciplinary on the other end. And that project of that you allude to, Helen, is really a very important one on bringing the knowledge systems together. And yes, the virtual space comes with a monolingual opportunity there, because it otherwise becomes very complicated, but it doesn't prevent from many other conversations to happen on this side and bring them together. I hope that we don't see that there's only one language moving into the future, but rather use many. I'm a very fond defender of multilingualism, but the floor is yours, Patrick, Paul, Walsh, and Amanda Abram, and we look forward to hearing your views on what we should abandon. And feel free to change the question, not too much. So,
so I'm watching my language, Charles, now, but so the idea obviously is we want to create knowledge for the purpose of the for the public good. So in a global commons, and the thing I want to abandon is I personally think that every bit of knowledge should be created in a Creative Commons. We should have free textbooks for undergrad, for all the schools, for the undergrad, the postgrads, and there should be no paywall at all. And so what we have to abandon is the model that we've had on publications and data, right? So when you think about universities creating with taxpayers' money, and I'm sure most academics, when they write their thesis and propose, they want to share it with the world, they want it uptaken with the world. The idea that that's given to the private sector and they take the property right and they charge you to publish, and then they charge the user to publish and the libraries to publish, it's the same problem with the vaccine, the COVID vaccine. That intellectual property was created by the taxpayer, and suddenly it was given to companies like Pfizer, who basically charged money and had it distributed only to the rich countries and not to the poor countries, right? And this is the exact same thing that's happening with knowledge and research, even if it isn't towards sustainable development. But so what the thing we have to abandon is that modality. So what I would add to the directions of change that are in this, what I call the International Commission on the Futures of Education, or their report, is that if you want public good and public knowledge for the SDGs, put it on public platforms. Make sure you have Creative Commons on these platforms and that it's accessible by everyone. It can be updated by everyone, meaning put in their own local take on it. They can mix and match the content. They can translate it into different languages. They can update it for free. So these are called remix licenses for Creative Commons. So this has to happen. We have to abandon the past in terms of the licensing and legal structures and what has been happening with data and research publications. Syllabus cannot suffer the same fate.
I'll go ahead now and just jump in here. I really loved the Slido and seeing the responses, and that the main perception from the audience is the need to change curriculum and teacher training. So very briefly, I just want to highlight one solution we have at the Global Schools program, which is a teacher training program called the Global Schools Advocates Program. It's a preliminary course on basically to build the capacity of teachers to not only learn about transformative education, but also to be advocates for education themselves. And last year we trained about 500 teachers that reached over 100,000 students. And some of the things that they were able to accomplish is they were able to advocate for sustainable development classes to be incorporated in the curriculum for the next years to come. They were able to advocate for sustainable development to be in the timetable to allow students to do experiential learning projects in the school courtyard. Another example, an advocate was able to allow the SDGs to be introduced at the beginning of the staff meetings for every year going ahead. But what we have found out by supporting these teachers across the world is that teachers also need to be supported within their schools and within the governance system. So on the question of what should we abandon, I think we also need to abandon any barriers to change at the governance level that really prevent this transformative education from actually happening in the grassroots work, in the classrooms, within NGOs, within lifelong learners. So one of the things that comes to mind is abandoning anything that prevents teacher autonomy and school autonomy to do what they want to do and what is the best for their students. And I think that's what Shireen was also saying when she was talking about exclusion and inclusion. So teachers and educators really need to be supported with the adequate resources to carry out these projects, and also the time in their own planning timetables to be able to do this, to build on student-led approaches. So schools at the governance level should really create a shared leadership and vision on this, maybe a mission statement on transformative education, and really create the structures to support teachers in carrying out transformative education in the classroom. So I think that would be my one thing, to remove all of those barriers.
Yeah, very beautiful. Indeed, remove barriers to publications, access to different in a different way to knowledge, curricula, textbooks, etc. And then indeed remove the barriers to teacher education. It will be very interesting to also look at the ministerial side of things, how this will be facilitated. So it's really fascinating. I would like to now go to the next Slido, word cloud question, which is a world cloud as well, because we have so many different nationalities with us today. And the question is, which obstacles remain to be overcome to create effective change in education? And so please do comment there. Yes, very interesting. So digital divide comes out very, very strongly, and lack of political will comes up as well. Exclusion, which was addressed by many of you, particular Shireen as well. Lack of political will. Language barriers, ideas to reach poverty groups, social inclusion curriculum. Systematic inertia as an obstacle. Too little dialogue with youth. Exclusion. So we see come out those 4 or 5 terms, I would say, but most prominently lack of political will or digital divide, and the notion of exclusion is a real obstacle to creative and effective change. Funding is an issue. So I think we have a good visibility on what people see as being real barriers. We need more inclusion, we need more support, we need more opportunities for transforming digitally in order to allow many more to come in. And we need good funding. Very good. Thank you for this. Very nice poll. So we will keep those and share them later on as well. So moving on to ideas of implementation. We need to also now, we've talked about what we should continue, what we should invent, what we should abandon. We now need to also look at possible solutions that might have worked or are expected to work in the future, and hopefully also scalable or transferable. So how should we do this? And shall I start this time with you, Shireen? Maybe I will start with you, Shireen Omondi.
Okay, I actually thought it was coming to me though. Yeah, so how we should do this is one of the things that still comes out that plays the integral role is finances. I think we need finances to develop curriculums. We need finance to support research institutions. We need finances to help teachers, take teachers through their training, so that even as we try to incorporate new ideas and global education that right now we're trying to focus on, they have the knowledge and they have been trained well, just apart from what they have been trained to pass to the students or the young people. So I think two things that stand out: finances and the curriculum. We also need to change the curriculum, incorporate the new ideas into the curriculum. And I think one of the speakers mentioned the importance of global citizen education, just having advocacy as one of the areas where we put a lot of focus. We have human rights education, and because a lot of issues revolve around human rights, and so this should be something that should be incorporated into our curriculum. So finance as the top of it and curriculum as second for me. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Very, very powerful. I will then turn to Amanda Abram and Patrick Paul Walsh. Next, give the floor to Helen Banderama, Chuck Hopkins, and I will end with giving the floor to Abigail Martinez Renteria. So maybe Patrick or Amanda, up to you.
I'll go first this time, if that's okay with you, Paul. So I want to just give a little bit more context on the Global Schools Advocates program that I mentioned on the last question, and how this has really been a solution that has scaled for us and could be transferable to other contexts, and kind of bringing in the role of transformative leadership here as well. So the program is a digital training program, all on edX and WhatsApp. And like I said, we trained over 500 teachers across 92 countries, really with the idea to provide this training for people that might be in remote areas or might not have had the opportunity to be trained on transformative education. So we go over pedagogical practices, high quality content. We have a curriculum and lesson plans in over 12 languages that they're able to use as well. And like I said, we've reached over 100,000 students with this program. And what we did see is that these teachers actually trained other teachers and reached other community members and were really the advocates of transformative leadership. So they trained over 12,000 additional teachers in their schools, and they also trained 30,000 community members and parents on the importance of education for sustainable development and transformative education. So it really kind of shows you the power of one person to scale everything up and be the leaders in their own communities, and to really take action and to be not only teachers for their own students at the primary and secondary level, but also have the ability to be teachers for lifelong education, as we've been talking about, by taking these messages to community members and parents. So we've seen many, many stories of change, of improved attendance at schools, of reports of increased teacher motivation. And we would welcome any teachers or any partners that want to continue scaling this up and promoting transformative leadership in this aspect. So
thank you very much, Patrick. Paul?
Yeah, no, well, I think COVID taught us the power of what I'd call this sort of bottom-up sort of innovation and waves of activity, in terms of the way teachers and people in universities step to the mark and they went online and they were creative. So I back everything that Amanda's saying. But I guess my background as an economist and working in political science and stuff and working for international organizations and governments, I kind of feel that governments have to mandate the change. They're going to have to free, if you like, free people up in terms of saying we want to mandate that sustainable development education is there from preschool all the way up. We want to make sure that it is open access. We want to make sure it's in a Creative Commons. We want to work with the idea of other governments to actually allow universities, for example, have global classrooms together and do examinations across borders, do accreditation across borders, build capacities in different parts of the world, etc. So I do think governments have a big role to play in actually just guiding or freeing up, if you like, the system to really allow this happen. But I have every faith in all the teachers and academics and students and youth out there that once that happens, it will, like wildfire, go right through the system. So I do see blockages in government policy and government legislation that have to be freed, and that's so. Hopefully, it's not contradictory what we're saying, but that's my feeling. Yeah.
You will have an opportunity at the end to each also say something, last few words. So you will. It's interesting to also really watch closely what's happening in the chat. There are even resources provided, even bridging political will gap, for instance, and other documents that are being shared. So also the speakers don't hesitate to put some info there. I now turn to Helen Balderrama and Chuck Hopkins.
I support what has been already said by Shireen, Amanda, and Patrick. And I would add that moving forward, I really want us to look at the power of partnerships in moving all our goals, our shared goals and responsibility towards SDG 4. One of the things that really made us successful this year is really leveraging our existing resources and partnerships and launching these new initiatives. And I would also say, let's continue to be creative. We have proven that the past 2 years we can be agile and adaptable. And particularly for big institutions like York University is the third largest public institution, public higher education institution in Canada. And yet we have been able to share and demonstrate these programs that are collaborative and are co-created and co-designed with our partners and even with the participation of our students. And then when it comes to finances, I really do appreciate, and this is so important, that we have finances to move our goals along. But I would actually expand the definition of finances to become resources, because each institution bring in different advantages to the table, right? So it can be in a form of knowledge, in the form of community partnerships, and not only hard dollars, right? So let's look at the definition of resourcing and financing and funding these dreams that we have for the future. Thanks.
Thanks, Helen. I think the idea of moving forward, one of the things we need to do is to sort of clarify, are we transforming society or are we being called upon to transform ourselves? And I think obviously we need to transform ourselves to start with, to have any kind of credibility. One of the steps is towards a whole institution approach. And of course, I think what we need to do there is build partnerships within our own faculties. There's tremendous knowledge about how to bring about change, whether it's institutional change or change, in our schools of business and so on. There are experts in this, how to bring it about. And human behavior, our social sciences, we should be talking with them. How should, these are research projects within. Our philosophy departments, what is the meaning of life? What is well-being? You know, these kinds of things. And then don't overlook the people who actually run the university. They know all kinds of ideas around energy use and so on. And of course, co-building this with students. So I think that is one of the ways. We know, for instance, that to bring about change, the leadership has to stand up and say, we're doing it. They don't have to say, this is exactly how it is and micromanage it. They need to turn over the leadership in this sort of thing. This knowledge is there. It's within our own institutions and we should do it. So for leaders, stand up, say we're doing it, and then put resources there. And I love the idea that it's not just money, it's human resources and reward and thanks. And I'll end on the thanks.
Wonderful. No, excellent. And indeed, it's not all about money. And that has been a big conversation that we've had over the years. Oh, we cannot do SD because it costs money, and where's the money in order for us to get our actions and engagement starting. But it's about this leadership. It's about also will. It's about understanding how we can turn around what we do, to take your last words, and bring it to a next step, giving it a different take so that we can indeed think about the future in a different form and shape. So Abigail Martinez Renteria, it will be interesting to see how you complement this push for what should we do and how should we do this and how should we really proceed to transforming education.
Thank you so much. Definitely, like I also agree with acknowledging human resources. Like My Work Mexico, for example, that is example that I have. We are a volunteer organization and we have sustained over 7 years without receiving any funding, which now we are struggling to sustain ourselves because no one is funding us, but we have been relying on these human resources and the leadership of people all around Mexico and now Latin America. And that brings me to how should we do this? I think that the coronavirus and the situation that we have been through have shown us that we need hybrid initiatives, not just online initiatives. We have seen that the digital divide is huge and that we are very, very privileged to be sharing this space here online. Not everyone has access to internet or to a computer, especially the most vulnerable people. So hybrid initiatives are definitely, like, we cannot ignore the online spaces. We have to take all the advantage that we can from them, but we cannot forget about those that are without access or have not the privilege to be here. I'm just to give you an example about some of our hybrid initiatives. Well, we try to empower people and leaders, community leaders, leaders in higher institutions that are leaders everywhere, in online mentorship programs, and they develop a project and they implement it or strengthen it because so many times they have the bricks already in grassroots communities. One of the examples that I can give is about intergenerational knowledge and how one of our ambassadors was doing a project within the higher institution, and he asked us if we could mentor him about how to bring that project to a really grassroots community. So he started implementing this agroecological project. It was about agroecological in some of the fields of his parents. And then all the community started getting involved. And then his mom, because of a connection that they have with another friend, became a superstar in YouTube, making traditional food with food from the agroecological project, and this grows so much. So this shows that this kind of hybrid initiatives are also intergenerational knowledge and that can have an impact, as Amanda was mentioning, just more broad than the persons that we are working with. So we have to look at that. Also, to give spaces to emerging initiatives. Like in the last few years, I don't know if it's because of the the channels that I follow or the people that I follow on social media, but you can see that a lot of initiatives emerge, like My World Mexico, like the Global Schools Program, like many thousands that are around the internet, that they are having an impact, not just like with institutions, informal education, but also with communities. So one of the things that I think we have to do is to look at these initiatives and not to let them die, because as I was saying, like, for example, My World Mexico has been a struggle a lot with funding because we don't have funding and we have to try to look for different ways to sustain ourselves. And we have been lucky that we have survived 7 years, but there are so many good initiatives out there that have not had the luck that we have had. So yeah, just like to look at these emergent and creative ways of making education.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So this is a plea. So if anyone is looking for something to fund, this was a call by Abigail. Contact her.
Yes, please.
I think that's very important. And I believe that we're here also a group of very passionate people about what we believe in for the future. And we see that there are real opportunities for transformation, and that education is a response. So not only in the formal sector, but the informal one, but it needs to be a connection and articulation between the two as well. So I've looked at the question. I think that in the Q question and answer, there are a few questions, but they actually can be responded in a more direct way. I don't. And I see they're very, very valuable. So the speakers, please take any of those and please do respond, because I think it's important to provide for a response. There was a question about the digital transformation of education, a question about languages as an opportunity for people to better communicate in different forms and shapes. Also the importance of Indigenous people. In the chat as well, many questions about inclusion, who to bring on board and how. So these are things that you can think about when I will give you the floor for some last comments towards the end of the session. We now first go to a next Slido word cloud question. And so if that can be pulled up, please, we will get to that question. In the chat, you will see that Isabelle Thoman has put quite a few references as well to the documents that were used as background. So the question was already answered, but a new one is coming up. And the question is, what is your most important takeaway from this session? We, of course, as the co-organizers, hope that this session will be picked up by UNESCO, by the UN, and also will help fuel the conversations at the Transforming Education Summit, nothing less, because there is a lot of information here that is of direct relevance to the debates that will take place. So please, in the chat, and I don't think there is another Slido, I just hear, but in the chat, if you can all then share what is your most important takeaway from this session. We will collate those responses, and we will then certainly also make them known to everyone in the follow-up brief that we will share with everyone once the session will have finished and the recording will be made available. So I would like to then, if I do not see a direct other question that could be for everyone, I will invite all the speakers for some comments, broadly speaking, on what you see you did not have a chance yet to say in terms of this transformation of education, the partnerships for the future, and how to build something new actually that will help transform for the better, and maybe also react to what your fellow speakers did say. So let me start by inviting Charles to say a few words, and maybe you can take each 3 minutes to start, and then maybe we have a round of question towards the end. Yes, Chuck?
Right, thanks. I think you could tell from my comments, I'm greatly concerned that the term environmental sustainability is going to be prominent there at New York, and that we're going to slip back into climate change and sort of go back to the environment versus development debate and so on. I think it's really important that we talk with our national delegates, and hopefully some will be listening now, and that we do not slip into that kind of discussion. We need to look at this in a truly holistic way and talk about a sustainable future. Because if we just focus on one, it's like trying to cross a 20-meter gap, a chasm of 20 meters, and trying to do it with 4 5-foot jumps. It just doesn't work. We need to look at this in a holistic way, and so on. So I just wanted to put that in there. It's important that higher education has a voice, and that we use it well, and warning people of slipping back into just looking at the environmental aspects. It hurts the whole movement of moving towards a whole institution approach. People say, oh, it's ministries of environment, it's not education, and so on, and we'll just slip backwards. So
thank you. So against any new forms of siloization, and indeed looking for the transversal and this important. So thank you for making that plea with us as well. Higher education matters like any other level of education. And we have to think about the millions of people who go through the education system and the beautiful opportunities we have to co-create a different world together, really develop and educate the kinds of citizens that will make the difference for the future. So absolutely fantastic. Helen, I will not give you the floor now. I will just make a mix. I go to Amanda first.
I definitely agree with everything that has been said by the other panelists. There was a question that I answered with only a few short words in the question and answer on basically a comment that SDGs need to move beyond just one course in the curriculum and really be across all disciplines. And I do agree with this statement in the Q&A, basically that sustainable development should be interdisciplinary and across grades, really integrated into education across the lifespan, as we've been talking about, and not really integrated into schools or universities in an add-on way or in a fragmented way. This is what I usually tell all the teachers that we work with when we go over sustainability holistically, and not only about the environment, as we've been talking about, but on peace and the whole agenda of sustainable development. So I am really happy to be here with all the other panelists and hear their interventions and what Abigail is doing across many different sectors, and very happy to answer any other questions that come up.
Okay, wonderful. Then Abigail Martinez-Renteria, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. Like education for sustainable development, it's a holistic thing. So we have to focus on not just formal education, as I have been saying it, but the knowledge that is all around us. And we have to figure out things like ways to integrate it together and to work together and to collaborate, but collaborate in a democratic way where more voices are heard and more voices can have a say in the actions that are around us. And yeah, just to finish, that this is everyone's job, and that we all should be involved, and we all have the responsibility to foster education and to foster education for a sustainable future for us.
Yeah. Patrick Paul.
Yeah, I feel like I should take on the digital divide since it came up so strong. So I worked a long time ago, I'm not going to say when, well, I'll say in the 80s, working for University of London external degree programs. And this is before technology as we know it existed. And we basically had to come up with curriculum and we posted it to countries like Malaysia, etc. And then we went out there to do Easter revision programs, etc. And what I'm trying to say here is that extension programs, like technology, can get you a long way. So, for example, teacher training colleges, ministries of education, libraries, UN libraries across the world, you can send them digital resources. You know what I mean? And then they can have extension services, right? So they can decide how they can go out to the rural countrysides or what they want to do or how they want to change the language, etc. So it's not quite who's on the internet and who's off. You know what I mean? Once you can actually, like the digital side can basically get you so far. It's like building a road, but then you have to go on the dirt tracks and you've got to get out to the communities, right? So I prefer to think of, you know, the digital infrastructure as something that has, you know, gets you everywhere 60%. And of course, you might have to do extension around it. And of course, you should make it mobile compatible. That can get you another bit of distance out of it, out of what you're doing. So I don't like this idea that 50% are online, 50 are not. That is probably, in terms of the true effectiveness of distributing or the potential to disseminate educational resources, it's not 50-50 actually. I mean, I would reckon if you have the add-on extension services, you could effectively get out to 90% of people if you think about it right. And this is the same with teacher training. Just Amanda's point is, you know, again, we can train people online who are in the teacher training colleges, but then they can go out into the communities and be more traditional in the way they train teachers and how those teachers train the next bunch and how they actually outreach into communities and so on and so forth. So, so really, I just think it's this digital divide concept to me is a little bit of it's misleading in some respects. And it shouldn't, we shouldn't underestimate the power of technology and digital innovation. But again, what is your purpose? Leave no one behind and make sure you actually address those sort of barriers and have a strategy for them. Basically go traditional when you have to.
Yeah. You just had a session where you had parts of it devoted to this digital divide in Paris at the tests. So maybe that recording, once available, will also be shared with the many. That would be interesting.
Yeah, I saw comments. We're not mentioning libraries in the whole of institution, but to be honest, I think any academic is fully aware of the role of libraries and digital repositories in resourcing education, both within a university and outside. So I think, as it was said actually at the side event by IFEL, the International Federation of Libraries, that's called Association of Libraries, you know, it's the oxygen. Libraries are the oxygen of educational resources. They, you know, they flow through the whole, they're the system and the blood of the system. So I certainly do not underestimate the role of libraries in that respect, in the whole of institution approach.
Yeah, definitely. It's a safe space as well, where you can come and sit, where you're away from your home duties and whatever. It's a space where you can just breathe and meet people also. It's fantastic space. Yeah, definitely. So do I now turn to Helen?
Thanks, Hilich. I guess I would like to share a couple of things which I believe I haven't discussed earlier. One of the initiatives that we have launched as well at York University is the Go Global SDGs in Action Challenge. And why am I sharing this is because I listened to Amanda, Abigail, and Shireen, and I see the potential for us to partner with you because this project funded by the Canadian federal government is actually introducing the intersection between SDGs, knowledge-based training, and also international mobility programs. So this is for those students who are excluded from global mobility or internationalization programs. And for you to qualify, it's not based on GPA or other you know, criteria that will exclude many or some of the students. Is actually based on interest in creating SDG action. So I would like, if I may, I would actually like to connect with you after this program for that potential collaboration. And I guess the second thing that I would want to share as well as a final message for all of our education community members present today is again a call for further collaboration and further creativity. Some of these programs that we have launched in the past year, we have discovered a lot within ourselves and within our current collaborations. So the future may look like a hybrid. The future may look like a GNL plus international mobility. So I think we have to be open for those types of conversations, and I think we need to leverage on each other's strengths and capacities and move forward. So those are the two messages that I want to share.
Thank you very much. I think we have been around the room and looked at the different issues there. What is it then that you would believe, we still have a little bit of time, and it would be interesting if maybe each of you would say what you see as very important to highlight, for instance, at the Transforming Education Summit to take place in September. Could you take 1 minute each to say, what is it that your organization is planning to contribute or would see important to as a contribution to be made? So it can be either already a concrete project or wishful thinking or a project or a plan. So I will now go around the room as I see you on my screen, and it's then Patrick Paul first.
Yeah, so there's so much. So the question is, what's our immediate plans? Well, definitely. I mean, we've been thinking about the creation and creating course curriculum and putting them up in edX, etc. But like, I want to make sure that they are used in appropriately. And one of the things that we're kind of working on is this whole idea of online masters, right? So the whole idea is that we need the transformations that are outlined in the Global Sustainable Development Report of 2019, okay? And education is one, that's a key enabler, but we've all the other transformations. So we have to hope that governments are taking seriously the idea that we have an existential threat, and that actually, we've got to jump into crisis management around the oceans and environment and the forests and our government systems and our societal and our drive towards peace. And there's so many issues. But to get to the point is that, let's say they agree, the whole world agrees, we all just stop, we're all driving for peace and sustainable development. They're going to turn to people in corporates and civil society and governments and say, okay, implement it. But the problem is that if they're not trained, if they don't actually have the education or the knowledge to actually do it, then we have a real problem, right? So this whole move then to upskilling and to make sure that people go back to school, maybe take a master's online, do a capstone online, is actually, I think, really quite vital. So we're quite determined regionally, both say in Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Americas, etc., to allow any professional anywhere in the world, doesn't matter where they're working, in a refugee camp, it doesn't matter where they're working, that they feel they can upskill easily and get a really solid training at master's level in professional development or in sustainable development, and then implement it immediately in their sphere of influence. Whether it's a teacher, that's another professional that can get trained. And we need to start this because at the moment they're not calling on us, but there will be a point in the future when the emergency really hits, and you will need basically an army, in brackets, to actually implement this across the different, across governments and corporates and civil society. So that would be our focus, to try and drive home the resources into professional training and upskilling.
Okay. So that's something you would wish the TES in September to also address. Abigail, what would you say could be done, should be done, could be on the agenda, the program in September?
Well, I think that lifelong learning, education, or in sustainable development. Currently in my work Mexico, we are running 5 programs, and each of these programs is for a different sector and for a different audience, I will say. We have one that it's called accelerators, if translation, but we join organizations and leaders, and we offer them some training to develop different projects, and then they can go to these grassroots communities and implement their projects, or to strengthen the ones that they already have. We have another one that it's called My World Mexico Kids, and we work with children. We try to open up spaces for them to make their voices scared, to tell us what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, what are some options that we have, and how should we transform education. We also have the mentorship program for Action SDG, and in this mentorship program, we try to join people from different sectors to show good practices that are going on around the country, and to do some networking so people can get together and work together towards different projects. We have campaigns that here is when we try to reach people that are not very into the sustainable development movement, let's say it. So through social media, through the leaders that are with us, we try to make some calls and to tell people, look, this is happening, here is what you can do. Some people just do some webinars, like for example, now that we were working on oceans topics, with the oceans, with the SDG about oceans, a lot of people got together in different communities, and they were doing some beach cleaning, and they were also offering some webinars telling about the relevance of taking care of our oceans and everything. And the last one, well, it's Lab of the SDGs, where we try to involve also the private sector and the governments, because we know that they have the power and they also have to get involved.
Okay, so what you would say, because I try to still think tests in September, you would wish for concrete examples to be shared and to be showcased at the summit. Okay, Amanda.
Thank you so much. So I think Paul already mentioned a bit on the digital perspective on showcasing digital education. We led the development of a session for the UNESCO pre-summit on this topic, and if all goes well, we do hope to have a follow-up to that at the Transformative Education Conference in September. And on my personal opinion on what is important to highlight, I really want to ensure that the voices of people and stakeholders in education that are usually not represented at high-level forums are there at the Transformative Education Summit. So teachers, school leaders, often we talk a lot about teachers, but not always about school leaders, people that work in the informal space, and also youth themselves. So I really hope that there is space for all of these different discussions to come in from the perspective of those different stakeholders in education.
Very important indeed. And I saw at the pre-summit in Paris, but that's what I saw. I couldn't see everything, but there was a good space for teachers, which was already a very important, and maybe not for school leaders, but maybe that is a good idea as well. As well, there was a lot of space for youth or for non-formal education. Also, what you mentioned, Abigail, these other dynamics, and many of the examples that Patrick Paul gave. So these different dynamics should also populate the space with, however, always the difficulty of having a lot of information, but making sure that it is being picked up and also used and introduced in these transformation processes. Shireen, how would you like to see, what would you like to see happening at the TES, if at all, and in particular?
One of the things that I think should be discussed in September is education in emergencies, because this is still on funding. Funding is a very important aspect, and I've been reading comments And I've noticed that a lot of the people who've been leaving their comments are saying, you know, education is given to specific children or specific young people. What about the children in the rural area? You know, we need the digital. We are in the digital era. We need laptops. We need computers. Who are these people that are getting these resources? So I think education in emergencies should be one of the areas that a lot of information, a lot of guidance or financing should go to. And I think also that is very important because you see the COVID-19 pandemic affected a lot of institutions. Let me just say all institutions, especially education institutions. And now there is that gap that has been created and we can clearly see it. You know, we don't need to be told because we've clearly seen it, and it has deepened the inequalities in schools, and especially during the school closures. So one of the things that would stand out for me is a discussion around funding around education in emergencies, and then something about academic mobility, which the Global Students Forum is currently having as a conversation, just ensuring that every student that leaves a different country because of, you know, fear of something or refugees are taken into different institutions and are given the same treatment as, you know, all students and citizens of that particular country. So yes, and that goes to still education in emergencies. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So we will try, you see me write all the time, so I'm trying to get all the ideas, and we will try and summarize something together with the partners and feedback to you, and maybe we can do something with it and also send in for the test itself. So next on my screen is Charles, and then Helen, and then we will finally wrap up. Charles.
Right, trying to unmute. The several things. One is that I really hope that we're successful in preventing the environment dominating. That you know, as I brought that forward, I'm really enthused by the 150 ministers of education who just met a few days ago in Paris, and they seem to be really focusing on SDG 4. I hope they don't skip 4.7. You know, the UN General Assembly on 3 occasions have said that ESD, that is education for sustainable development, not just education, but education for sustainable development, was not only an integral part of SDG 4, but it was the key enabler of all of the SDGs. And so that also is true for HESD, right? For higher education, not just any university, but universities that really focus on it. And so I hope that coming out of the transforming one, that the message gets into the UN General Assembly and into their work, and that ministers of education are called upon specifically. And hopefully within that will be teacher education. If we can break through there, the engagement with the world's 80 million teachers and faculty members and so on would be huge. But right now, ministries of education don't go looking for things. That we need to knock on the door, call on them, and be specific with what we want. So I'll leave it at that point. Thanks.
Yeah, this is absolutely essential indeed. And before giving you the floor, Helen, this is also the advocacy work that we've been doing together, also with all the partners here on the screen and many more around the world. You know that the International Association of Universities was created 70 years ago to build these dynamics among universities of the world. 20,000 higher education institutions accredited in the more public and the non-profit sector. And so we try to work with all of them and involve them in these dynamics, and also reach out to the other stakeholders in society, the ministries you talk about, the other partners that Abigail was talking about, or any of you, this dynamics that is really for this co-creation space of something that will make the difference. So for instance, normally we would have come to the United Nations high-level political forum with a strong team of higher education institution representatives from the 5 continents to really make a lot of noise and use the drum to make sure that the people present at the high-level political forum do hear what is happening inside the institutions. So that they don't only go for outside consultants who will inform their policy making for the future, but really work with the people who are inside the institutions. Higher education institutions, the part that the IU is working with, but we also know that it is in higher education institutions that the teachers are educated. So we work with the other parts and the other sectors. It is through higher education that lifelong learning is often also promoted and offered, and not enough, but we there engage with other UN and UNESCO institutes to promote that part. So to open up the doors to new opportunities. So that's a very important work that we certainly need to do together. That's where we work with SDSN and with the SDG Academy. And we're very pleased to do that because that's the way forward. Or with the Global Student Forum, we also involve every time we can in order to have different voices in with the many partners here and in the chat and in the different missions that we try to really serve around the world. So it's very important that we have these conversations, but that we advocate for it, and that we do not only knock on the doors, but that we hope that someday they will knock on ours as well, more systematically and more easily. So I will give the floor now to you, Helen. And also highlight what you would see for the tests to actually also feature.
I guess what I would like to see addressed or be discussed at the next TES Summit or Transformative Education Summit is how do we address, or how are we preparing for a future of education within the context of global uncertainties, including emergencies, as what Shireen had mentioned. And how are we addressing and responding to the different needs of different types of learners? Somebody already mentioned lifelong learning. It's not just about basic education, secondary, university, post-secondary, but really it's how all of us can transform and continue to learn based on what is right in front of us. What programs and policies and capacity building programs have to be launched? Which models could or may work? And I guess finally, how do we share the richness of our learning so that we can build from each other and enrich our efforts across communities, across higher education institutions, and across countries? So I would be very, very interested to learn and hear from different regions of the world. I know it's quite a big forum and a big discussion. So it would be very good to hear the experiences and learnings from our colleagues from around the world there.
Okay. Wonderful. I think we reached the end of this very stimulating session. There are many other sessions that you can attend. The recordings will be made available, and it will be good to also connect the dots from wherever we sit. I would like to thank all the participants. We reached almost 200, I think, at one peak, which is really very good. And we also know that many are listening live on YouTube. We also hope that the recording of this session will travel far, and that it will help inspire others. So all the participants, thank you for the very lively discussion in the chat, for your contributions in many forms and shapes. And I would like to thank all those who have made this possible. And you see the names on your screen, Leah, Pelayo, Marie, Jung Jiao, and Isabel, to name just you, but and Nayara, Costa as well. So there are many people who made this possible, and we thank you for your incredible support for this beautiful session. And I would like to really thank and applaud, and you can do that through the chat as well. I would like to thank all the speakers for your incredible energy and the great ideas, and for sharing so many new insights on very crucial topics. What we need to continue doing, what we need to invent, what we should abandon, and how to transform education. I think we touched on all, and we gave quite a few insights in what is possible in order to really ensure there is a possibility to transform education in order for it in turn to be transformative for the many. So thank you so very much. And we look forward to working with you much more moving into the future, and also moving into the tests in September. So thank you, UNITAR, for your strong support. I see you, Lea, would you like to add something at this point, or shall we close it here? Isabel, thank you as well. And
no, thanks to all of you for joining us today, and thank you for moderating this session. And to all our participants, I'm sure you'll be joining us in the upcoming days for other sessions as well, so that, as you mentioned, you can get a fuller grasp of this year's HLPF topics. So thank you all.
thank you. Have a nice day, evening, or night, wherever you are.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.